Welcome, everybody, and namaste, namaste. As you see, I have the most remarkable gentleman sitting in front of me, as you can see, Freddy Silva. I should say Sir Freddy Silva, because he is in the most extraordinary man that comes with a very unique pedigree over the years of extraordinary work that is packed full of integrity and amazing, dazzling intelligence. So, who is Freddie? Well, I'm just going to give you a very short, watered down version of. Freddie is a best selling author and a leading researcher of ancient civilizations, restricted history, sacred sites, and their interaction with human consciousness, or indeed with the pathway of sentience that we know upon our planet. He's published 6 books, and they've been translated into 5 different languages. Now, also, he is a documentary filmmaker and art photographer and leads very extraordinary tours to sacred sites. So, Freddie, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Oh, it's an honor, Stuart. Good to be with you finally. Oh, we're up to 9 books now, by the way. In 6.
Oh, are you? Oh,
I've been very, very busy.
Well, you are prolific. It is astonishing the quality of work that you produced for us all. Thank you for your contribution to our world.
Oh, it's my pleasure. On 15 documentaries to boot. And I have a low boredom threshold. And living in Maine now, where I live, have been here for 20 years. And being, and I say this lovingly, by the way, the lesbian capital of New England, it's very hard to get a girlfriend. So I think that gods want me to concentrate on other things rather than dating. So it's actually worked out quite well because I do like to sort of research and go walk about and try to do things from a personal and experiential point of view. I think it makes all the difference, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're a tireless researcher, an adventurer indeed. So you're always on a level of odyssey somewhere in the world. When I receive your newsletters and check in from all of the references, it's just astonishing the body of work that you've created. And today, I mean, there are many books that we could be celebrating, but of course, today we're celebrating this particular book that you produced through this wonderful publisher. And so, as you see, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of Freddie's books called Portals. And so we're going to be weaving a wonderful story around the purpose of portals. But
Indeed.
perhaps give us context of where this insatiable appetite for the mysteries of life, particularly in relation to the geography, the geomancy, the telluric energies of sacred sites, where did it all begin?
I think that we're all born with a mission, and some people are very lucky and they find it very early. I found it very late, at least in the middle of my life. I was drawing pyramids when I was 3. I was unusual. My peers didn't like me. They found me a little bit unsettling, and I used to have the hell beaten out of me every single day at school. So I sort of migrated into the normal world. I was in advertising, I was in photography. I actually wanted to be a rock musician, believe it or not. I had hair down to here. I was tapped on the head by Freddie Mercury, physically tapped on the head by Freddie Mercury. I knew that was a sign. But I also had the common sense to know I didn't have quite what it took to get there. And my passion eventually drifted as I went through the commercial world. And one day, after I got fired for the 14th time for having a conscience, for not selling things to people that's going to kill them, like artificial sweeteners and things like that, I had the chance to sit down in my little library that I have here, which you can't see, which is slowly kicking me out of my own building. There's so many books around here. I've got this book out from the library of The Great Pyramid, written by Peter Tompkins and Christopher Bird, a fantastic compilation. It's been there for over 20 years, and it was looking at me, and I thought, I would love to be able to do this because this is what I want to do. I want to know about the ancient past. Modern things really appeal to me. I want to go back in time and find out how we got here. Why did they build these things with humongous stones? What was the passion? What drove them? And you know what? You put that thought out there and you put that intention behind it and that force of passion, and suddenly things begin to open. The next thing I know, I'm one of the leading researchers into crop circles. And then I wrote a best-selling book, which is still selling like hotcakes 20 years later. I had no idea that I was going to go there. And I also read a book by my good colleague Graham Hancock about the Ark of the Covenant. It's one of his best books, I believe, which few people ever talk about. And I thought, if this guy can make a living doing that, I can surely quit my high-paying job and go walkabout. And of course I did. And I lost my marriage and my house and my cars and my cats and everything. And everything fell apart, just like Osiris. You're chopped up into a million pieces. But you know what? I didn't know it at the time. I was going to be put back together into the person that I came here to be. And I haven't looked back after 30 years of touring. And like you said, 9 books, 15 documentaries. I'm constantly on the go. And I don't regret a moment of it. It's been very difficult. I mean, you lose everything. And I mean everything. But, the fringe benefits, and we're talking about one of these with our good friend John Stewart Reed earlier on, the things that happen to you at these sacred places, they make up for all the hardship, because it puts you at front stage of this big drama called the planet Earth and consciousness and what it is that it means to be human and also superhuman. And I wouldn't exchange this for anything else, because it is the ultimate game. You're playing the game of the gods. So that's how it all kind of happened for me, kind of late in my life. But you know what? I have Capricorn rising. Things happen very late in life to people who have Capricorn in their chart. So I'm having the best time right now.
Well, bless you. I mean, you don't look as though you're at the end of your life. You look.
I'm just getting started.
Very sprightly. I turned 70 this year, and I feel the same
Really?
thing. I just started.
Well, but it's not the age; it's the mileage.
Exactly. Absolutely. So, portals. Perhaps we could gravitize this by saying what your favorite portal in the world may be. I know there are innumerable entry points into the interconnectivity between, the umbilical points that you talk about between the worlds, the interpenetrating aspects of the worlds. But what would it be if you have one?
Oh, that's the most difficult question you could possibly ask me, because it really depends on what I'm looking for at the time. I just came back from Portugal, as you can tell by the suntan and by the inability to stop drinking coffee. And I was saying the same thing to people. I said, it really depends what it is that you're looking for. I mean, what brought you on this tour in the first place? And don't say me. I'm not the reason. There's something else that's driving you to come here. Because right now, whatever is here for this week is the portal that you're looking for. There will be something there, some umbilical cord that connects you to a final level of reality. And I took people to this place, which I will not mention where it is, not far from the city of Évora, one of the oldest places in Europe. And it's very hard to access. You got another farmer, you got to climb through all kinds of strange obstacles. And you're in the middle of this wood with these standing stones in this kind of ellipse. And people were completely disappeared into this portal. They were away with the fairies, and I let them. I just said a couple of words, let them connect with this spirit of place. And by the time we got to lunch, they're different people. They've touched on something else. So that becomes the most favorable one. And again, if I'm looking for something very specific, each place on the planet was designed to elicit a specific response. Many of them have many common points to them, but fundamentally, they're also connected to certain specifications of knowledge. So Kalanish, and specifically Kian Huluvig, which is, I think it's romantically named Kalanish 4, if I'm not mistaken. I prefer the original title, because in Armenian, of all things, it actually means the room of seeing. That's a fantastic title for a stone circle. And I never see anybody when I go up there. It's very, very hard to find. You go on the single road south of Kalanish, the main site, and if you blink for 2 seconds, you'll miss it on the edge of a hill. Boom. And I take people there, and you can't strip them away from the stone. They become the stone. And that's the reason why it's called the Room of Seeing, because although Kalanish, the main site, gets all the attention, it's in perfect condition, Kalanish, or Ken Huluvig, is unique because it doesn't get any attention. And that's where the wisdom keepers, dressed in their white robes, used to go a long, long time ago. And they used to connect with another level of reality. So that's where I get a lot of my information from whenever I'm looking for the Gaelic world. which is also the Armenian world. It's a very long story. This stretches over 6,000 years. And I had no idea that Armenia and Gaelic culture and Scottish culture were connected. So it forms a part of another book. And that's what I mean by when I say, depending on what I'm working on is what my portal becomes my favorite place. So when I was looking at the origin of the whole Scottish megalithic culture and the Irish megalithic culture for that matter, that was my favorite thing. And it's still in my mind because I love it up there. I like the sparseness of it. I like the thinness of connection between worlds because that part of the world has been unadulterated by human folly for so long. So you can feel it in the land. But paradoxically, I also just came back from New Zealand in March to do a whole tour, and I've been there 6 times. There's a place there called the birthplace of the gods. Now, you know that when someone gives that kind of place, that kind of title, you know there's something special. And I've been there 6 times. It's a natural landscape temple. People chiseled the face of the gods onto the stones, and you can still see several of them in the limestone. And it's powerful. If anybody on the show thinks that they are not psychic, and we all are, go there. Take a sandwich and some water because it's very hard to find. It's a long, long hike up to the mountains, but you will be rewarded with the fact that you can see very clearly once you're within the aura of the main stone. That remains one of my favorite places because for all of those reasons and many, many more, which I haven't yet found. And it's helping me penetrate also the mystery of New Zealand. And there is a big mystery there. So again, it's related to the work that you're doing. That becomes the most fundamental and important place that you're drawn to.
And it seems that the points of intelligence that you define in your Odysseys and the revelations that you bring forth are each a portal, which is what I find so amazing about your oeuvre, the whole of your métier. You seem to dance effortlessly through many of the wisdom traditions. And if dance is an operative that's useful, it feels as though you have an interconnecting key that you're able to bring the intelligence of the wisdom traditions into association, not through some absurd fantasy, but by really linking historic identities, as you've just said about the whole connection between the Armenian and the Celtic. And of course, going back to our pre-show chat about the whole substance of that dynasty, Akhenaten, and his great queen Nefertiti, and how their eldest daughter, went on this great sojourn and changed her name after marrying the Prince of Tyre, I believe, who was also equally a priest magician, and changed it to Scotus.
Absolutely.
And then we get this connection between not just simply where they landed on the western coast of Scotland, but the interconnection with the northern part of Ireland.
Absolutely.
So we see these wonderful weaving paths. It seems that you're able to dance that tune, that symphony, that mazurka really well.
Yeah, I thought everybody could do this. It turns out the more people talking, they said, no, we can't. I mean, you seem to be able to connect dots easier than anybody else can. And I thought, it doesn't seem to be that difficult. I guess I can. But I used to do that in my work every day. I mean, I used to get a big dossier of paper on my desk about this thick, and I have to turn that into a billboard to sell a vacuum cleaner or something. And I'd be making all these strange connections in order to bring an image and a headline together to tell you that this product's for sale. I then just applied the same mechanism to my work, and I was able to connect climatology to archaeology to history just by standing back, removing myself from the equation, because I'm just an innocent bystander. I really don't know that much, and I approach every project not knowing that much and claiming that I don't know that much, specifically to take me out of the picture, stand there looking at all this information and going, oh, well, that thing connects to that, that connects to that. And before you know it, there's this sort of magic carpet ride. And again, it goes back to if your passion and your intention are true and it connects with the intention of the spirit of what you're looking at, there's like a partnership that takes place. It's almost like you're connected with the spirit of place and they're also helping. They're becoming part of the project. I don't tell many people this because they will probably think, I'm never going to buy a book from this guy again, because he gets his main information by standing or listening to upright rocks. That's what I do. I go onto a sacred site, a portal, and I say, what's this all about? Because I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going with my passion. I want to know more about this. And that's a very good phrase. What's this all about? And the spirit of place knows what's going on in my intention. And suddenly there's these images or words or connections that pop into my head, and I'm just scribbling things down. I'm walking around very gracefully. And that's my way of honoring the site and saying, well, I'm going to leave a little bit of myself here, a little bit of my light. It's a bit like watering the plant. So many people take so much from sacred places, but they don't put anything back. So I leave a little bit of my consciousness there, replenish the spirit of place, and they reward me with all of this information. But then I have to spend years going to libraries, talking to historians, archaeologists, statisticians, climatologists, all kinds of ologists, and putting this story together. And it takes time. I mean, it takes a long, long time. I mean, my book on the Templars took 15 years to put together. And I had no idea that the story behind the Templars really came down to understanding the sacred places connected with Isis in Portugal, of all places. I had to go and learn about that, go away, come back and look at the story from a different point of view. So it's very rewarding to have this sort of relationship with the spirit of place, but anybody can do this. It's not sort of a unique thing to people. It's not an egotistical thing. It's just showing the passion for the people who constructed these places and put so much effort into putting up rocks, which at some points are over 400 tons in weight, which is a lot of effort for anyone, even a crane to lift. So I figured if they went to that trouble to make sure that these places were marked for our benefit and for our accessing of another level of realities, then let's go back and ask them, well, why did you do it? And how can I basically tell your story to a world that's become very sarcastic about the past, even skeptical about the past? How can we renew our connection? And I guess I'm being very well rewarded for it. So I'm just going to keep going in that direction until there's a great big brick wall in front of me that says, okay, I think we've done enough now. But I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. And neither does my accountant when he asks me, when are you going to retire? And I said, I don't know. When I drop dead, I guess.
Well, you're on a mission, and it's a sacred mission. And please keep going, because it seems indefatigable, but you've just used this really interesting operative, the fact that you're thriving. You're just literally thriving on the whole thing. And in the meantime, as a sacred messenger, you're bringing us such extraordinary information, because as you well know, I guess one of the prima facie reasons that stimulates you is the fact that the people that go with you are in search for something that we're beginning to lose, and that you're remembering them back into these unique portals, these sacred sites that, of course, you and I know that when we humans enter, then suddenly our cells vibrate on a completely different frequency, and we're able to open to that divine part of our beings.
Absolutely. This is
Keep...
why I call them the self-help centers. And I watch people change. I mean, I hope I am doing something right. I mean, I do observe people, especially when we're on tour, and watch them from a sort of a distance from when they arrive and compared to when they leave. And they don't want to leave, most of them. It's like, no, we've experienced something so dramatic. Sorry about the motorbike going by. It's the problem of living on the main road.
I thought maybe it was an astral presence that was just coming to say hello.
Yes, it's an astral presence. What am I thinking? I got to think in terms of commercialization here.
I have
your version.
The city of Portland, which of course is a portal land.
Portal land, exactly.
And I won't go into it, but I actually had a very, very close connection with Portland during my time of being trained as an actor. So we're going back to the late 60s, early 70s, because that was another incarnation. And I ended up at the University of Southern Maine in a theatre company called Treehouse Players, because two of the professors at the university, one was known as Minor Roots, and the other was called Peter Stump. So they and it became the Portland Players. I don't know if the Portland Players are still running.
I believe they're still running in South Portland, yeah.
It's a
What a
very,
small
very
world.
extraordinary. And I remember falling in love with Portland and spending, lots of superb times there.
Oh, it's
However,
changed quite a bit. It changed quite a bit. But I mean, going back to your question, yeah, I mean, it's about being a kind of guide. I don't know, guide the right word? I don't know. A kind of impetus for people to say, well, this guy can do this. He's seen unusual things coming out of stones in pyramids. He's written about all this from a personal experience. So if it happens to him, surely it can happen to me. I think that's what I'm beginning to see where this is going. I don't consider myself to be anyone special. I think we're all special in some way. But for some reason, I'm on this mission, like you said, to bring out the past, to be of service to awakening people and helping them, give them the tools that they are craving for. And I do see a positive change. I've seen lawyers show up on one of my tours and, they bring their left brain with them for 3 days. They can't shut down. And of course, I humor them, obviously. It takes some time just to quieten down a little bit. And everything's very skeptical and blah, blah, blah. I want evidence. I want the bibliography. Well, I don't carry a bibliography in my head when I'm in the middle of England. It's just, that doesn't happen. That's why I write books. But by the middle of the trip, something's happening. She's quietening down. People are beginning to relax and going, fine, she just shut up for a little bit. I said, give her time. I mean, she's in a different world. It takes a while to get out of that mental construct and go over to the right brain. And then on the very last day, we're having a farewell dinner. And I remember we're just going around the table asking people for their impressions of the tour. And it comes to her. And she breaks down. I mean, she literally just broke down and she says, this is the most incredible week of my life. I've completely changed who I am. I nearly broke down. In fact, I did break down at that point. I said, I just can't hold it together anymore. This person has changed because of something that she's experienced. And I've been part of that thing. So for me, it's actually very worthwhile. And a year later, she'll email me and say, well, I'm still a lawyer, but I'm now helping nonprofits and people who are obviously in definite distress. I'm making hardly any money that compared to what I used to be, but I'm so happy. Boom, that's it. That's all you need. So in a way, it's bringing back the global village of who we were all meant to be, because we've been sort of going through this experience in the 21st century to the point where everything is falling apart right now for a very good reason as well. And I believe these people built these places exactly to help us because they could foresee 20 centuries, 30 centuries into the future, and they could do this, that we would lose the plot. So now we're going to mark the places where the veil is very thin between worlds using big rocks, so that when you can't feel it and you can't see it, then you know where it is. All you have to do is go to these places, no matter what it's called, Stonehenge, a Great Pyramid, Avebury, Callanish, it doesn't matter what it's called. They're all the same. Go there and you connect with this final level of reality and you begin to expand your level of being and remember what you came here to do. I just did this sort of demonstration in Portugal at a stone circle with one of the people in the group. And I now use dowsing a lot to demonstrate the energy field around things. And I said, okay, let me just douse the energy field of this stone here. And it has a little aura. I call it its business card. Everything that the stone has experienced over time is inside this auric field. And I'll put my rod down on the ground. Okay, it's about 2 feet away. I think we can do better than that. Now, give it a thought of love. Send it a mental construct of a bunch of flowers or a cup of coffee, a bottle of champagne, anything that you feel is appropriate to give the stone as a modicum of gratitude for being here. And they went, poof. I said, that's it. That's it. No, you don't have to meditate for 15 minutes. It's that quick. And I walked back, 16 feet, and the energy field had expanded by 4 times. But then I went to douse one of the guys that was actually in the group, and I said, look at your energy field. It used to be 6 inches in front of you, and now it's 4 feet around you. You've also expanded because you've taken on the form of the energy of the sacred site. That is priceless. And suddenly, this guy's on a different level. He knows something has happened to him. It's concrete, it's certifiable, and now he's got a greater confidence to do what he came here to do.
Mm-hmm. So it feels to me that you have this ability to really see that, that the visual cortex is immensely alert for you. So, for example, going back to your story of being an advertiser, you were able to collate a tremendous amount of information and then go right through an alignment of discernment of going right to the very core of what the golden nugget was all about. So you would know how
Yeah.
to. It feels as though you're doing the same thing with all of this extraordinary work that you do, because you dance so easily through the different traditions. If that's the case, just as a possible hypothesis, do you feel that portals is a resting place for many lines of energy that are quite divergent, but also you have this unique skill of bringing them together? Do you feel that it rests within this? Because generally speaking, am I right in saying that you specify when you're writing one of your books, you specify about a particular location? I mean, your wonderful intelligence then takes us into a portmanteau of different aspects of information and how they affect consciousness, but you are going very much in one direction. Whereas does portals bring it all together into an even finer collation?
I think it does because, and here's the funny thing, I actually didn't want to write this book. I wanted to take a year off and have a sabbatical and take care of me, have a vacation for the first time in 30 years, which is very difficult. And dare I say, heal a broken heart as well. And that's all part of my personal story, but we won't go there. And of course, the universe and your soul probably have a different idea of what's really needed and required. And I was sitting there minding my own business, looking at my navel, and I got a call from Ariel, the publisher, and she says, "You know what? You keep talking about portals, you keep talking about these things, and you've written all these books, but you've never actually written about this specific thing." And I thought, that is actually quite true. I haven't actually sat down and synthesized all of this information into something very simple. It's actually the simplest book I've ever written. It hasn't got one reference in it. And if everybody knows me well, there'll be 800 references at the back of the book, because I wanted you to make sure that this didn't come out of my imagination or from searching on Google. It comes from real live research, which is why the bibliography is usually quite thick. This is a completely different story. I just wanted to sit down, get it out of my head and out of my system and put it on paper. It literally wrote itself in a week. It was ridiculously fast. But it was wonderful, because suddenly all the stuff that I keep talking about how these places work, what's the mechanism behind it, how do we measure the energy? And we can measure it now, which is the wonderful thing. Even NASA has admitted that these places are tied in, not just to themselves along the Earth, but they also connect to something far out in space, specifically the sun. And these things open and close every 8 minutes. That's an exact quote from NASA. So they're obviously onto this. And I figured this would be a great moment to put all of this information down in a way that is easily synthesized by even my grandmother, were she alive. Someone who doesn't necessarily have a very deep appreciation for science, where they can say, yes, I totally understand what you're saying. It's a feel, it's an interpretation, but it's also genuine and tangible. And we can actually back it up with real science in a very simple form. And that's why it was such a pleasure to write, because it makes a point very clear that these are places where you and I can connect so readily with an invisible force, whatever you want to call it, God, angels, fairies, it doesn't really matter. You go to this astral reference library so quickly in order to connect and bring over information into your daily life that you can then apply on a daily level. And that's why the middle of the book was so important, because I had other people also who didn't know what I was going to write about, and I was not going to read what they wrote about their experiences and what they believe to be portals. I end up validating their experience, and they end up validating what I was writing about, which then led to the third part, which was the practical. How do you approach these places? How can you make the best of your time there? Even, for example, I mean, there's a place just down the road from me where they make fantastic coffee, which, of course, as a European, I have to go and sit in. But I know the woman that runs it, and I said, of all the buildings that you could have had, why this one? Because there's something special about it. And I said, yes, because there used to be an Abenaki sacred site under the building. You know it, I know it. And the portal is still open. So when you sit there, you're not just having coffee, you literally are away with the fairies, and people love going there. And it survived the recession during COVID as well. So I'm very glad for that. It seems to be very self-protected as a building. So it becomes a very practical mechanism as a book to try and tell you how to make the best of your time there, the preparation that you need to do, which is not that difficult really, unless you want it to be that way, but also what you can get out of it as well, and how how you can bring all this information into your daily life and become the God that you were meant to be all along. It's like the Hopi had a lovely way of saying it. We're the gods we're waiting for. People sit here at conferences saying, well, when's the change happening? Well, when would you like it to start? Well, right now. Okay. Well, what are you waiting for? I'm waiting for someone to write a story or a book or a documentary. No, that's not how it happens. That's just the catalyst. You have to put it into motion, and suddenly it hits them. You already are a god. You were never born lesser than that. You were just told that you weren't. So now I'm telling you, you are the god. Go out and do it. And it's so easy. And I watch people again putting this information into practice and watching their lives take on a greater mantle and a greater awareness, and dare I say, a greater level of achievement and also purpose. And that's what we're all looking for in these strange times, and they are strange. We're in charge of our direction. We're in control of the direction. And if you just forget about all the things that you have no control over, at least directly, your life becomes much easier to manage. So again, it goes back to the portal. What was it built for? It was built for to teach you these things in the first place, so you can have the tools to empower yourself specifically in times of chaos.
And so it's a resting place. If you could just define in a sentence what you feel the essence of the book to be, what would that sentence be?
Oh, the hard questions. The essence is that the temple and the portal are a mirror image of the human body, and they're a mirror image not just of the planet on which they sit, they're also a mirror image of the sky. They are the one place where you are going to find out more about yourself than you ever want to know. And in that way, you discover who you are and discover your purpose in life. I can't think of anything much more important than being aware and awake during this strange dream, which Shakespeare wrote about so beautifully. All the world's a stage. Bingo. Absolutely nailed it. Regardless of who Shakespeare was, which is a whole different program. But you know what I'm saying. But yeah, you empower yourself to do the dream awake. Every ancient culture that I've interacted with talks about the same thing. If you can get to the point where you can recognize why you're here, what you're doing here, and you can dream this dream awake, you're in control. You can have a degree of control over your manifestation process, and that's very cool. You can actually do certain things within the realm of your experience and the laws of nature to bend things to open the path for you to do what you came here to do. Simple exercise. The story about the Navajo in New Mexico years ago when they had a terrible drought for years. And the guy walks on top of the hill, goes around 7 times chanting, walks down to the hill, and in the usual self-effacing manner that the Navajo have, let's go and have a beer. And they sit down with a friend at a bar outside of Santa Fe, and suddenly there's a news flash on television. Warning, seek high ground. Extreme low pressure wave just came over this part of Santa Fe County. Cows are going to be washed away. Cars will be washed away. Houses, everything. It did. And the guy sitting next to him says, that's a really impressive way to interact with the elements and use the power of conscious intention to interact with the weather. But tell me, have you actually worked out how much rain to ask for? And he says, nope, haven't quite worked that one out yet. I love those people.
Very, very extraordinary. I spent 3 years working with a Native American elder in New Mexico who was of the Tewa. He was the sound healer, the sound shaman of the Tewa, beautiful painted arrow. And so regularly we would drive onto the mesa just south of Taos, and he would conjure rain.
Yeah.
Just extraordinary. But it would have had an open hatchback car. I would be driving, but it wouldn't be raining in the car. It would be raining on the outside of the car, but the windscreen was crazy. And I would say, Joseph Rael was his New Mexican name. What's happening? He said, so that's the way it is.
I just love how they do these things. It reminds me of when I was learning all of my craft and understanding how energy works and your interaction with it. Again, I had no idea this was even possible. I'm learning as a child, essentially, which is the best way to do it because you have no judgment of it. You appreciate it for what it is. And this is in the days when my research into crop circles was overlapping with my appreciation of sacred space, which is the same thing, essentially. And I just remember sitting in Wiltshire in my little dusty thatch roof cottage where the height of the ceiling was up to here. So I'm walking around like Quasimodo all the time. And I went out one day, and it was about 11 o'clock at night, onto this conical shaped hill just outside in the Pewsey Vale.
Mhm.
And I love going there. It's a portal in itself, and one of the telluric currents that goes through Avebury and Stonehenge goes
Yeah.
right through there. And I remember sitting on top of on the summit and watching this very dark cloud, which the way that light works in Wiltshire is it's absolutely pitch dark. But because of the slow sodium light color from the nearby villages, you can see certain details in the sky and the underside of clouds. And I'm watching this cloud rolling down the hill from the chalk downs and towards me. And I said, it's a long walk back to the car, and I really would like just to have a quiet moment just to sit here with the gods and the fairies and just connect. I don't want to get wet. Thank you very much. So I wouldn't mind it if you just let me alone for a few minutes. And suddenly, around the hill, the rain was coming and coming, and I could see it raining on both sides of the hill. And I thought, thank you. That's I don't. Maybe I'm doing it, or maybe you're doing it. But whatever's happening, it's magic. Thank you very much. It's wonderful. Okay, I'm done now. And I walk slowly down the hill, past the cows, over the horse fence, following this narrow little lane. I can see my car in the distance, and it's raining literally beside me on both sides, like a horseshoe. And right behind me, it's coming up. It's coming up. But I'm thinking, that is an incredible thing. I don't know why this is happening. Maybe it's my interaction. Maybe it's because I asked for protection. And I thought, if you don't mind me pushing this a little stage further, whoever is around me, I now call them the management, whoever is looking after me, can you just wait for the moment when I put the key in the car and I close the door? And you know what? Exactly the moment I put the key in the car, open the door, close the door, boom. I mean, we're talking 4 inches of rain. And I thought, that is really cool. And again, it gets my attention. It's like, well, how's that possible? Who am I interacting with? So, boom, you're now also researching these people. And I call them people because they are very real in my life. And before you know it, you're in this big family, an extended family, and they're feeding you the lines, but then you have to do all the work. It's real magic.
It's wonderful to hear your stories and the way that you express all of the extraordinary experiences that you've been through. And it seems that you, again, dance very easily between left and right brain because you have this unique intelligence that, from a left brain point of view, that is able to grasp onto many, 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 many details. And so you obviously have this wonderful filing cabinet here, but you're also able to open yourself very beautifully to the preternatural world, to the supernatural world, and constantly make reference to fairies. I'd love to take us further into what the potential next project may be. I know, I know that you probably already have a definition of what that is all about, but I'm really amazed by the way that you're able to give us these exciting tidbits about where you feel the status quo is right now. And I know that you have lots to say about the dwindling central organizing principles of our societies in the West and indeed in the East, and how there is a very natural diminution process taking place. And so we're unplugging and we're developing our own spiritual sovereignty. And your work leads us into a full understanding of, as you were just saying, who we are. Who are we? Not what are we, but who are we? And you brought in this fascinating understanding about how the Shemsu Hor, the Achus Shemsu Hor, were traveling from Atlantis to that area that we call today Egypt, which was, of course, called something completely different, as we know. And I'd love you to refer to that because it seems to me that the holy ones, the unseen ones, your management, are giving us very unique insights into how we can perceive a route of conduct. And by that I mean not just simply on the outside of our bodies as we take the journey, as we take the odyssey, but what's happening within the inside of our bodies so that we can make very specific choices, like the one that you were just referring to, ask and it is given, that we make very specific choices about the uniqueness of what this new piece of information, which is very old, ancient, but how you're discovering the enormity of what the Shemsu Hor were all about, the followers of Horus. Perhaps you could take us there, would you?
Oh, that's a big question. Now, the Akushem Suhor are fascinating, and I'm fascinated by what remains of their work, their teaching, their history, which is not much. I mean, it's splattered all over the walls of the Temple of Edfu, and thanks to a woman in England at Manchester University, Eve Raymond, who's passed away now, who actually deciphered it without any judgment, which is the best book you could possibly have. And it makes no sense unless you understand symbolism and metaphor.
Do you
Which
have the
Oh, believe me, I have the book here, and it's $480. It's not leaving the house. You can't even point at the book. You can't even think of pointing at the book. And I've read it now. I'm on my sixth reading. I am now beginning to really understand and grasp what's going on. That's how deep and how broken up the whole story is. But again, you have to understand metaphor, symbology, and you have to understand the Egyptians didn't make any difference between the metaphysical and the physical world. The two are interchangeable. Once you understand that, now you can reread it for the sixth time and go, oh, that's what they're trying to tell me. So I got to the point where I've nearly nailed down where they came from. It's now underwater, unfortunately, somewhere in the Indian Ocean. But the point is, back to your question, is that I see a huge parallel happening to the time when they arrive in Egypt, which is in between the Ice Age. So 10,800 BC, the Earth was hit by a huge swarm of meteorites, and it's provable. And sea levels dropped. Ice Age forms. Not many places on the planet where you can go, which is safe. So they found this place along the Nile, which back then was actually the Red Sea, because the Nile didn't exist then. There was an open access to the ocean. And they were putting down what they call settling down on the sacred mounds, where they would put the information of a creative God upon which will be built the future temples. So we're still nowhere near building anything. And they knew that they had about 500 years before the second calamity came back to close the Ice Age. And then they came back to finish the job. So that's where we pick up human history as hunter-gatherers. And the fascinating thing about it, and I began to put this down for my book, The Missing Lands, which also took forever to compile, about this very facet of where we are right now, because the parallel is incredible. We are facing today the same problems that they were facing 12,000 years ago, which is one half of the cycle of the Great Year, which is 26,000 years. And so back then we were faced with the problem of, to cut a very long story short, a complete decimation of the human race by a group of people who shouldn't have been doing what they were doing with human women and breeding with them, which created all kinds of problems. And these people were called the Nephilim, the Children of Orion. They weren't the problem. The problem was the offspring of the bastard children of the bastard watchers, the small group of people who, the watchers always get the bad phrase. Not all of them were bad. There's only a small group of them that defied orders. So we need to concentrate on that group and not demonize everybody. When the children of their children began to beget children, that was the problem. They were eating humans for fun. They were very tall, red-haired, in fact, in many cases covered with red hair through their bodies. They were terrible giant people. They were cannibals and very brutal people. They did not adjust to life on Earth very well. And basically, the flood was initiated in order to get rid of them. But unfortunately, it also got rid of most people. There's an agonizing moment in the Book of Enoch, the Ethiopian original version, that says you're a fly on the wall watching a meeting with the lords of Anu, the Anunnaki, with the top watchers. And they're saying, well, we've lost control. We don't have enough people to rein in the bastard children of the bastard watchers. And we're going to have to destroy the earth to help humanity. And that never gets mentioned anywhere. You know, that's we owe these people a modicum of gratitude for willing those rocks to hit the earth exactly where you want them to hit, to wipe out most of the population. And then the people that survive, the gods, will then help the surviving humans to get their act together. And here we are. Well, one half cycle later, we're facing exactly the same problem. And I've actually talked to people at NASA that said, we enjoy reading your books because we can't tell the public, of course, because we have to be scientists. We get our information from professional sources, if you know what I mean, or acceptable sources. But we do like reading independent researchers because you're much closer to the pulse than we are, because you can talk to everybody. You bring in all kinds of disciplines. We don't have that ability. So it's funny how now we're facing the same problem with that arc of meteorites that was coming around. And it comes around every November. We look up at the sky. It's called a Taurine meteor shower. And we're saying we now have the technology to look at the Taurine meteor shower, and we can see the big chunks that were here 12,000 years ago coming back this way again. That's the problem. And that's why they keep talking about, annihilating asteroids with laser beams or atom bombs. They're preparing us for the fact that we're facing mutually assured destruction within the next 15 years. And there was a crop circle that gave us the exact date. So we've had this information. So to bring all these thoughts together, we're now going to be in the same position that the Watchers and the Anu were all involved with, and the Aku Shem Sahora were involved with 12,000 years ago. But this time, we have the potential to shift the outcome. Now, I was sitting on a beach in New Zealand thinking about the darkness into which this last chapter was going. And I don't do dark. I like to leave things on a positive note where we feel enriched by what we just read and we feel empowered by what we just read. That's my job as an author. And I'm thinking, where can I find some information that will prove that we can actually alter the outcome of what's surely coming our way? And bingo. The book just came flying straight at me, and I found evidence of human consciousness involvement where we can actually change the computerized drumbeat inside an office. So Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Department, that's a long one, PAIR for short, they instigated this experiment back in the 80s with 20 people in a room, focusing their intention on this computer to try and alter the drumbeat of the machine, and they succeeded. And when you tie that into the transcendental movement that also did the same thing with lowering the crime rate in America back in the 70s, they put the two together and they've worked out it only takes 1% of the local population thinking of the same outcome for any situation to alter the outcome of the situation. Now, that would be an incredible thing if we were suddenly faced with incoming projectiles. We've had it. We're gonna basically get hit by this thing. It'll take out the whole of civilization. So what do? We only need 1% of the population of the planet to will the rock away in order to get over it. And just from that situation, we may just discover peace on Earth, because we suddenly realize we work together. We can do this. And I've just given away the book, at the end of the book, by the way. So if you, it's a spoiler alert. Forget about the last 2 minutes of what I just said.
When you speak of the book, you mean the book that you have just written?
The Missing Lands, which is the two that precede this one.
Okay.
But I do hint about this in Portals as well, because it's part of that technology about the intention of working with sacred space. So we are at that potential now where we're following the same tradition as the followers of horrors. We're now the gods we're waiting for, rather than allowing for outside help. We now have to rely on ourselves to be the gods that actually change the outcome, exactly as they did 12,000 years ago. There's a certain poetic closure to this whole thing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I was sensing. And it's fascinating that you have brought this in, because psychically this was going to be my next question. Without wanting to embarrass you, it seems to me that you are an anointed one, meaning that you are part of a tradition of intelligence that is soul-inspired, that is interstellar in its inspiration, because you awaken for us remarkable healing properties that exist within the planet and also within our bodies, and that when our bodies meet a certain node and we engage either in what you were suggesting, which that thought creates reality, and we are within a certain integrous state within our bodies, so there is truth within our hearts, that if we chant, we automatically bring about a ray of energy that is going to be the supernatural aid that we're looking for to, and this is vast, but to heal world conflict. And if there is interstellar conflict in terms of meteorite coming in our direction, then there's something very unique there.
Exactly. But I mean, you're part of the same process as
Well,
well, Stuart. I
we,
think that a lot of people are.
we are linked.
Yeah.
I feel that when I speak of anointed, I mean one is chosen, so the destiny is very specific of being, through past lives, through awakened consciousness in this life, that there are certain abilities or certain aspects of intelligence that pour out of our hearts that draw us. Much of what you're describing, you see, I find fascinating because it happens to me intuitively rather than cognitively. Came to me during my first trip to Egypt, delete my first odyssey in Egypt. It was a trip to bond with my pa, who was a very, very challenging man. And in fact, what happened was that I was awoken to the mysteries and it became this extraordinary odyssey. And I had so many visions. This is 50 years ago. I had so many visions. And that's when my master, Thoth, stepped forward and said, this is what you're going to be doing. So I feel that the time is ripe, this interconnection, and dare I, not wanting to put any pressure on you, but I'll be really glad to have another conversation when we're just sitting over a cup of coffee so that we can see, well, what are the potentials either separately or in a co-creative vein of being able to bring the prophecy that lies deep within your heart into a reality for the beneficence and the betterment of humankind and the Gaia.
I think from experience, now I can look back with hindsight, there's so many people that have woken up, and specifically around the time of the Harmonic Convergence, which I had no idea what it was about when it was happening when I lived in London. And I just remember getting in my car on a Friday afternoon in the middle of summer with my then wife and trying to get out of London on a Friday afternoon, which you have to be certifiable to do that in London on a Friday. I just wanted to go to Stonehenge for some reason. And I got there. There's a big crowd. You can't move anywhere in traffic. And I just rolled down my window and I said to the policeman, what's happening? Oh, it's something called the Harmonic Convergence, mate. You'd have to park 5 miles away. I thought, okay. So I went to Avebury instead, which I found much easier to deal with. Quiet, gentle Avebury. And that's when I realized something has happened here, which is working something out, but I don't understand what it is. But as years went by, as I began to be involved with more people that do this work, they said the same thing. Something happened on that day where we woken up. And I'm thinking, are we sleepers? Are we ambassadors? Have we also given permission to be part of this movement where we give part of our will away to the management and we work in synchronicity to be part of a change, which is due anyway? Someone has to do the hard work to get everybody onto the boat. I'm beginning to realize that we are part of this sort of big congregation of people that agree to do this at some stage. And of course, we're born and we forget that we signed up for it. So I'll be sending a very large invoice to the management now that I realize what's really going on, because I thought I was going to be driving a nice fast car and playing guitar for the rest of my life with some beautiful nubile women around me all the time. Boy, was I wrong. So I do believe that all these sleepers are going around the world slowly being woken up. Exactly for what you just said, for this purpose of helping the majority of people say, look, we're here to do something better. And it's going to happen. The change is going to happen. But luck favors the prepared. And if you are prepared, the change will be much more stoic. We can ride it with more elegance. It's been done before. We've had 13 near end of civilization scenarios since the Great Flood, through solar flares, minor meteorite strikes, and we're still here. Because people somehow appear at the right moment, at the right time, to prod people along to say, we can do better than this. And it doesn't have to be that difficult. It can be very elegantly. We just have to work together. So I do agree with you. I think that all of these sleepers are suddenly waking up. Not to plagiarize Dune in any way, by the way.
Indeed. Well, I mean, I totally concur. I completely cohere. When you were in Henge during that August weekend, I was at Glastonbury. And that's when I had the divine transmission of meeting 12 angels, the angels of Atlantis, which I've been Well, they taught me for 15 years, and meaning when the student is ready, the masters come. So, Sufi leader, wisdom keeper in Egypt, the Native American sound shaman that I was just talking about, etc., etc. But yeah, there's an interconnectivity at this time, and of course, the other principle is that the fact that we know that there's a very large photonic belt that is being created through a new light species, communicated through Sirius and Orion on the other side of Venus, so we can't quite see it at this time. And at some point over this fall, meaning this autumn, or next year, it's going to create a great flash on
Oh,
our planet.
nice.
And the Gaia is triggering all of this because the Gaia is getting ready to transcend. And so I feel that we, as co-creative elements upon Gaia, are being stimulated to open in this fashion. So I
Yeah.
hear, and there are further wisdoms. I know we could go deeper, and we don't really have the time, into the principles, the philosophies, the precepts of the Shemsu Hor, and how they were led by, I believe, a Christ being in the form of Horus, who was part of the love light circuitry of the cosmos, and he knew how to bring in these unique intelligences. I've been trying to get a copy of the book for
Good luck.
the last 30 years.
I'll give you a clue. If you put an interlibrary loan, you'll get it out of the Manchester University, since you're in England. There are 2 copies flying around England. There are 2 copies flying around. Actually, there's 1 copy in America, and I'm the only person that's ever taken that copy out of the Library of Congress because there's 6 dates on it. That's me. In fact, they've left it now in my local library because it cost them a fortune to ship it back. It's a very rare book, but I finally just ponied up and bought the damn book because I have to keep writing on it. I have to put notes on these things. It's a very, very difficult book. You have to sit with it for a certain amount of time, as you know. But that's the short way. Get an interlibrary loan, and you'll get a copy.
Okay.
Or I do know a man in Glastonbury at Courtyard Books that if you happen to have a few notes and some patience, he'll find it for you for a good price.
Ah, okay. Maybe you could give me the reference to that because I'm going down to Glastonbury in a couple of weeks' time. So
Yeah, Courtyard Books. Ask the man behind the desk and say, I need a copy of this book. How patient should I be? And he'll say, extremely patient. And how much money are you willing to go? Give me a nice big figure, a big thing to work with, and he'll find it. He's very, very good at finding difficult books.
thank you for that. That's wonderful. You see, so many extraordinary lines of energy are all interlacing. This is absolutely beautiful. Freddie, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time together, but I want to thank you very deeply from the very core of me for all that you've shared, your generosity and kindness of spirit and litheness. You have such wonderful humor moving through you. Is your
You have to have
generosity?
a humor to do this, Stuart, otherwise you go mad. And
Well,
thank you for what you do as well.
it seems really effortless, you know. So I really want to thank you for coming on. And if at some point next year, I would love to invite you back so that we can actually go further into the extension of the missing lands. And you can bet
Twist my arm.
I shall be acquiring that book as soon as possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you're all in absolute celebration of the wonder of listening to Freddie for the last hour and how he's been able to scintillate us with all of these extraordinary points of reference and the meaningfulness of it all, and how you allow us to feel the really organic nature of all of the richness of the wisdom that you're sharing with us, and how there is a simplicity to it. All we need to do is to get away from control and start managing our lives in flow with the universe.
Well said. Well said. No, nice.
If you wouldn't mind staying there just for a moment or two. Ryan, thank you very much indeed. And to everybody who's tuning in, namaste, namaste, namaste.